Welcome back to this new video. Today we're going to talk about threat hunting. And in today's video we're going to discuss the difference between threat hunting and incident response. We're going to also discuss MITRE-based approach to threat hunting. And then lastly, we're going to take a practical scenario where we are going to examine how to perform threat hunting or how to hunt for threats according to the MITRE framework, starting with the initial access and ending with the C2 framework. The practical scenario involves solving the tasks laid down in this room, Threat Hunting Foothold from TryHackMe. This is a free room that anyone can deploy and deploy the virtual machines in it. All you have to do is to create an account and deploy the machine. Okay, so first, let's talk about the theory. So, what is threat hunting? I mean, we have all wondered what is threat hunting and what is the difference between threat hunting and incident response. Basically, threat hunting is the process of hunting for threats. Meaning, I know it's obvious, hunting for threats, but the thing is, it is the process of looking for malicious activities in the network. So we might be asking now, what's the difference between IR and threat hunting? So in both cases, we look for malicious activities such as indicators of compromises in the network. Now, what's the difference? The difference is in threat hunting, it is proactive. Meaning, we don't wait for the incident to manifest in the network. We proactively sit down and analyze the network for malicious activity, such as catching indicators of compromise. On the other hand, incident response is a reactive, meaning there is an incident that was escalated by the incident response team, and we are acting on this incident. We've discovered that a workstation has been compromised, ransomware activity has hit an endpoint. So what we do, we activate the incident response, and now it becomes a reactive process. But in threat hunting, it is proactive. We don't wait for the incident to manifest. Okay, we kind of stay on the lookout for any threats, and we always look for indicators of compromise. Okay, but how to do that? So one approach is we actually hunt for threats using the MITRE framework. But how to do that? Let's say usually we have the network. The events are coming from various sources. We have the web traffic. We have the events coming from endpoints, right? Or the events coming from endpoints. And we have, say, the SSH traffic. So you could be monitoring the traffic in real time, okay? Or what you could be doing is analyzing the logs. So you might be given the past month's logs of the web server or the events on the endpoints or SSH traffic, and you might be doing threat hunting on the past month's logs. Okay, but how we do that? You're going to an approach is using the MITRE framework. So to hunt for threats, we're gonna have to think like an attacker, to put ourselves in the shoes of an attacker. So we start with an initial access. So the attacker, when they decide that they want to attack a network, they start with an initial access. They look for ways to obtain initial foothold. So what is some example? Example is SSH brute force. So the attacker would try to gain access to the SSH server by brute forcing the credentials. Another method is phishing attacks. So by sending unsolicited campaigns to targets, attackers hope that targets would click on the links and provide their credentials. So that's how initial access occurs. So when we hunt for threats, we hunt for these signs in the logs or in the real-time traffic. Then we go to execution. So the execution, the attacker has already got access to the network, and now they want to perform further attacks. So what they do, they would usually execute payloads. Example is partial payloads. Another example is payloads delivered through the Windows command line. Another example is payloads delivered through Python maybe, or other programming languages. So when we hunt for threats according to this stage, we hunt for signs of partial execution, commands through CMD, or payloads executed through programming languages. Okay, now that we have gathered enough information about the initial access and the execution stage, now we want to know if the attacker has executed commands to evade defenses. An example is disabling AVs or antiviruses. We want to look for signs that an antivirus is disabled in the endpoint. Persistence, the attacker would seek to maintain access in the network or in the host that they have compromised. What they would do, they would manipulate the registry keys, add new registry keys, especially in the startup category. Another method of persistence is creating scheduled tasks. So when we hunt for threats indicating persistence, we want to look for signs of registry modification or scheduled task creation. Lastly, C2, command and control servers. So when the attacker has obtained access in a network and they have gone through all these stages, now at the very end they want to, what they say, smuggle traffic, okay, to the C2 server. The C2 server is a attacker's main station. It's where the attacker maintain all of their tools, their tactics, and all of their data. So in C2 stage, the attacker would try to, depending on their objective, they would try to smuggle the data through various methods, such as DNS, maybe HTTP, or they would even use cloud-based apps, such as Google Drive. Through these methods, attacker would try to steal the data from the endpoints. So in hunting for threats, we want to look for signs of using DNS, HTTP, or Drive to smuggle or to exfiltrate data. Okay, now that we have talked about threat hunting and how to approach threat hunting, let's now jump to the room in TryHackMe and see how can we apply this practically. So the first thing first, we want to start the attacker machine and click on start machine from here, and then we're gonna copy the IP address. As you can see, we have the Elastic Stack loading, which means we're gonna use Kibana to parse the logs. So Elastic as the username and Elastic as the password. So as you can see, the tasks are divided or split based on the technique. Okay, I'm gonna go to discover, and here we have three indices: file beat representing the system access logs, Apache access logs, packet beat representing the network traffic logs, and lastly winlog beat representing the Windows event logs. So you have three indices where we're going to conduct the investigation. Regarding the time, make sure to set the time, the starting time, July 2023, 3 July 2023, and for the now set it on absolute and select again July 2023. As for the time, you have to select, or the starting time, it's going to be AM, and the ending time, it's going to be PM 23 or 23:30. Click on update, and now we get some logs. I'm going to start first with the file beat, investigating the system access logs, and from here, with the task 2 initial access, I'm going to scroll down and start answering the questions. Now, by answering the questions, we're going to explain the threat hunting process at every step. So use the Discover tab on the left sidebar. To answer the question, what is the attacker's successful authentication timestamp on the jump host server? So we want to look for signs that the attacker has successfully authenticated on one of the servers. That's why we're going to use the file beat, because it has all of the logs about the system, such as SSH or Apache. We're going to select the columns we would like to investigate first. So we're going to start with the host name, and scrolling all the way down, we will want to use the audit log type. We're going to also have the host IP. Let's type audit, and from here we're going to select, you can choose success, but for now we're gonna first hunt for the failed attempts, because we want to find out what is the IP address first. Usually when an attacker brute forces the credentials, they first encounter failed attempts. When we hunt for failed attempts, we will be able to later on find the successful attempt, because a successful attempt is preceded by several failed attempts. Okay, so scrolling down, it's gonna have these for now. Okay, for now we're going to cancel the host IP and search for a way to add the search for the host name. For the host name, we have, as you can see, two host names, web01 and jump host. What we want is the jump host. That's how we're going to start with a filter that narrows down the results to the jump host name jump host. I'm going to put an and because we're going to have more filters typed. So here we're going to look for the event. Okay, so event category, we have process authentication session. We want to look for the authentication attempts. So that's why we're going to select here event category authentication. And let's see if there are some fields that enable us to filter based on the failed or successful results. So we're gonna type auth. What about SSH event system? All right. So now for now we're gonna use this. Wait, should we do this? Cancel this and update. So we have 6,731 hits, and from here I'm going to add a couple columns. So here we're going to add the event. So it's authentication, and we want to add this. As you can see, we found it as a system authentication SSH event. We add it here. So as you can see, now we know what is the nature of the attempt: failed, invalid, or successful. That's why in the filter we're going to add and system auth event and look for failed. We want to establish a pattern of several failed attempts. So now you have several failed attempts, as you can see. In order to find out statistical information about the failed attempts, we want to extract the highest count of failed attempts, because this would indicate brute force attack. That's why we're gonna visualize this. So we're gonna click on save current query, and we're gonna type SSH brute force. So we save the query, and then we go to visualize library, create a new visualizations, lens, and from here we can select the saved query we have created earlier, and now we should have this loaded up. We're going to change the chart into table because it's the most appropriate form, and from here we're going to select the fields. Available fields, none. So we have to change this, the indice to file beat. And now I should have some fields coming up. Now we have some available fields. We're gonna type here first the host name, okay, and then we're gonna search for the category, event category, and we want to put the SSH, search for SSH, and use this to find the nature of the authentication, failed or successful. And we want to have some information about the IP addresses. So let's search for IP. So we have source IP. Let's select source IP address. That is great. Now we can track which IP addresses have the highest number of failed attempts. As you can see, this IP address has the highest number of failed attempts, indicating that the owner of this IP address was actively involved in brute force attack. So usually if they were successful, okay, if you assume that after these failed attempts they were successful, they should have some sort of successful attempt after all of these failed attempts. 1,133 failed attempts. Now if we focus on this IP address, we're going to be able to find out if they were successful at the end. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to the Discover tab. Okay, we're going to keep the same query, host name, jump host. The category will be authentication. And here, instead of failed, we're going to see what are the values accepted for this. So all of these are failed. We should have some successful events. Looks like we don't have. So on the jump host, all of these look to be failed. Do we have some successful attempts? Let's try with successful. Success. None. Let's try with accepted. So accepted, there is one. Okay. Now if we take a look at this attempt and we use source IP address here, add it to the table, as you can see, it's the IP that we earlier saw when we were actually examining the failed attempts, which means that there was a successful brute force attack on the server. What is the question now? What is the attacker's successful authentication timestamp on jump host server? Let's take a look at the timestamp. So it is July 3, 2023. That's the exact timestamp. We're going to copy this and you can answer with it. Okay. Now, what is the name of the PHP file accessed by the attacker via the cat command after gaining successful code execution on WEB01? So now we're switching the focus to the web server logs. We want to find out the name of the PHP file that the attacker accessed via the cat command after gaining successful code execution. So now the attacker here, assumingly, they performed some web reconnaissance, enumerated the directories, they found weakness in the web server. Through this weakness, they were able to perform command execution. We're going to first start with understanding the nature of the attack. So first we're going to switch to the web server logs or the traffic logs, packet beat, and then update. Okay, so we're gonna cancel these for now. And the host name will be the web01. Host name web01. Okay, and then we want to focus on the HTTP traffic. So let's look for network protocol. So we have, okay, so let's specify here and network protocol. This time we're going to specify HTTP. We're looking into HTTP traffic, and we want to specify another option such as the destination port. Okay, so destination port 80. So we have 6,985 hits. Okay, now we want to find out what happened on the hostname web01. We want to find out what this IP address, what command they executed on this hostname through HTTP traffic. Before we find that, let's first understand what are the directories that the IP address here or the owner of this IP address has accessed. In order to find the directories, we're going to have to use AND here. And let's focus on this IP address, source.ip 167.71.198.43. Okay, and then we want to take a look at the directories they access. Since we cannot specify that through the available fields, we're going to have to use the status code. So usually when an attacker performs vulnerability scanning on an application, they would start with directory enumeration. They would actually list all the available directories. So they need to perform directory brute force. Throughout this process, they would encounter non-existent directories and directories that actually exist. So to be able to find these directories, we're going to have to use the HTTP status or the response status code. To find out the non-existent directories, we're going to filter for the status code 404. HTTP, let's see, response status code. Now we have one, 404. Okay, now let's edit and add some columns or fields. Let's say such as URL. Do we have URL? You're going to see the full path, URL path, And also you can add method. And if you want to add a user agent, okay, that now looks much better. Now we are able to see the brute force attempts. As you can see, the attacker was trying to brute force directories, and it discovered some directories, but these entries returned 404 status code. As you can see, we have 6,742 attempts on the web server, meaning 6,742 times they found or they encountered 404 response code returned from the server, which means all of these were directory enumeration attempts. And from the user agent, we can see that the tool they used, it is GoBuster. So they use GoBuster to enumerate the directories. Now, from the attacker's perspective, after all of these failed attempts, we want to find out if they were successful in finding some directories. Therefore, we're going to change the status code and use 200. Let's see what directories they found. We can also filter for GoBuster, but we're gonna see what they found. So they found these directories: backup, Gila, looks like some application running. They found test/test, and that's all there is. 39 hits. So 39 hits, and we can see now what the attacker did. So if we take a closer look at this entry, we can see the command they executed when they found this directory. They tried to execute a command through a parameter. The parameter name is, as you can see, if we copy this here, the parameter name here is C, right? And through the C on the application Gila, they were trying to execute system commands, file inclusion, directory traversal, and here they used one-liner PHP to execute a system command. So what's the question now? What is the name of the PHP file accessed by the attacker via the cat command after gaining successful code execution? Okay, what if we add more response codes that would indicate successful enumeration? Not only 200, we have 200, and we have 301, 302. So now we have additional 3 hits. Now we have 41. Now we can see more commands appearing in the URL. So we have ls to list the directories and files. We have home and we have other commands executed as well. Let's scroll down. We have, as you can see, pwd to find the current working directory, which MySQL. These are the commands the attacker executed through the PHP one-liner. And here we can see the configuration file they were trying to where they were trying to extract the content using the cat command. So that's the name of the configuration file. What is the name of the unusual process executed within the time frame of update inc on execution on this workstation? Now we're gonna have to switch the focus to the event logs. So we're gonna click on winlog beat, and the host name let's search for the available fields, none, 0. Update, and now we take a look at the host names. We're gonna cancel these for now, we don't need them. Host name we want is WKSTN-2. So here, let's say host name. Okay, great. See the question here. What's the name of the unusual process executed within the time frame of update inc? Okay, let me give you feedback on this update. So this updating is an email attachment was downloaded by the workstation with this name. This email attachment was downloaded using either Chrome or Outlook based on the background given here in the briefing or the room briefing. That's why what we're going to do, we're going to find out how this attachment was downloaded by which process. Most likely it was downloaded using the Outlook client based on the briefings as you can in the room briefing. So here we're going to say and look for a field that represents the process name. The process command line, process name. We have one. We add it here and say process dot name Outlook. None. Let's remove the full qualified domain name. Maybe this would make this work. Okay. How about we remove this? Same, no results. Okay, let's do this. Use wildcard to match all the host names with this that starts with this name. Oh, okay, look what I made. It's the mistake here. Let me move this back here and update. Still no results. Okay, we have some hits now. 41 hits on this workstation where the process name is Outlook. What's the name of the unusual process executed within the time frame of update? Okay, now let's add more fields here. Let's look for file directory, add this, file name, gonna add this, file path, add the path as well. We should see now the document name mentioned here. So we have update zip. Now usually Outlook, it is a usual process. Okay, there was another process executed on this file. To find this process, we're gonna have now to change this process, okay, and use the process name that we see that it is unusual, but we don't know it yet. So to find the name of this process, we're gonna have to modify our query now here and use the file name we have just uncovered, which is update. Keep and update.zip. Find all the events and the details about this file. And now we have 7 hits, and as you can see, this is the file name we're looking for. So what happened, the file update or the zipped file update was downloaded using Outlook. Upon extraction, there was another file inside it. The name of the file is update inc, which is a shortcut file. So now we see another process involved in the extraction of this zipped file. So what could be the reason where an email attachment was extracted from a zip file and then another process was spawned to handle the shortcut file? An email attachment is supposed to be Word file, Excel, PDF, not a shortcut file contained within a zip file. That's why we consider this as an unusual spawn of such a process. So the process name is You can have a look here at more details of why the Explorer was involved in this file. So we're gonna click on this and view surrounding documents. Now we can see more details about the processes spawned. So we have Explorer and then we have PowerShell. Now it becomes clearer that this is a malicious attachment was downloaded. And the answer name here is PowerShell. Okay, now switch to execution. In the execution task, we have again 3 questions to answer. Tracing back the CMD and PowerShell child processes spawned by the installer executable. What is the first command executed via CMD? So now we are hunting for signs of execution or command execution on the machine by PowerShell and the command line interpreter of Windows. Let's get a switch here to, or go back to Discover and switch the indice to win log beat. Okay, tracing back the CMD and PowerShell child processes spawned by an installer. The main process was an installer. What is the first command executed via the CMD? So here the question is stating that the main process was an installer and this process spawned CMD to execute further commands. You want to find out what was that command. Again, go back here and specify the host name. The host name was .name. So now we don't know exactly the host name, so we're gonna use the first the prefix. So the prefix is WKSTN and then wildcard, indicating we want to match all the host names that start with WKSTN. Okay, we have 173,000 events. I'm going to use and process name. So here you go. Shall we select an installer or shall we select process name that matches either CMD or PowerShell? We're gonna, in order to find the exact command, we need to examine the child processes. So here, that's why we're going to use the child processes, CMD, exe, or PowerShell. So we have 70,000 hits. We're gonna add another tweak to the query where we're gonna specify a file creation or process creation event. Because ultimately, these processes are child processes and they were spawned by another parent process. That's why in order to find out exactly more details, we're gonna have to specify the event ID. We're examining Windows events here. That's why we can use the IDs of the events to narrow down the focus. So we can search for event. Let's search for ID. Win log event ID. We can use this in the filter. So and win log event underscore ID. It's gonna be 1, indicating process creation. Good. Now we have 104 hits. Fine. Let's now tweak the fields available at the view here. So we're going to go for let's search for command, add parent command line, and we're going to add process name. Let's add information about the host as well to find out the exact machine that was compromised. Okay. So now we can see the exact commands that were executed. We want to find out the command that were executed by CMD here, okay, CMD or PowerShell, where the parent process is an installer. So here we can see parent process command line. Let's search for if there is any field that matches parent process. Parent process name. So now we have an installer here. And an installer process spawned, as you can see, child process named CMD. And there was a command here. This is one command. This is an example command. Apparently, there are more commands executed by CMD. What to find here? Tracing back, we want the first command. That's why we're going to use the time filter here. We're going to use the time filter and revert the order to be descending order. Let's see here, look for the parent process where the name is an installer. Scrolling down. Okay, let's search now. It could be an installer, it could be another process, but we should also take a look at the command line as well. We want to see instances of the installer executable. Okay, now there is one. Look, the first occurrence here, that's the first command executed. This is the first occurrence of the installer executable where it spawned the CMD process. And the command was whoami/privilege. Using the process ID of the PowerShell process spawned by MHTA, what is the destination IP of the network connections made by this process? MHTA is a pre-built binary in Windows operating system, and it is one of the LOL-BAS binaries, living of the land binaries, that attackers may use to hide their execution activities on the machine. We want to find the process ID of the PowerShell process spawned by this process. Okay, that's going to be a little bit tricky here because we're going to first hunt for this process and then see all the child processes spawned by this process and examine the network connections made by them. So here we're looking to the first thing we're gonna tweak here is the event ID. We're looking for one, process creation, because PowerShell was a child process spawned by the process in question, or 3, because event ID 3 indicates network connections. The process name here is going to be different. It's going to be the process name in question. Let's see if we get, oh, we have one. We have only one. Let's examine this. So this one is, the process name here is Chrome, but we're looking for, this is not what we're looking for. We're looking for the events where the parent process is this one. So we might be reversing this or changing this into, say, or add in the middle, we can add parent, and we get another hit. So here the parent process is the process in question, and indeed it spawned another process, which is PowerShell. What do we need to find? The network connection made. So here, if we can add an IP address, I don't think there's an IP here. There is. We can add destination IP here. Destination IP is none. Using the process ID of the PowerShell process spawned by, what is the destination IP of the network? Now we know that the PowerShell was spawned by this process. Yeah, let's look for the process ID or the PowerShell process ID. In this case, it is, let's see here, parent process PID, we don't want this. We want process PID, indicating the partial process. We're gonna copy this, and here we're gonna say process PID. You can remove the comma if you have got no hits, and there are 24,000 hits. Okay, looks like now we have to narrow the focus more. So we're going to go back and add the win log event underscore ID, and it's going to be 3 because it is a network connection. Looking now for network connections made by partial, and we can see now in all the instances the IP address is the same. This is the destination IP address. Following the CMD process spawned by Python this time. Okay, what is the command line value of the net.exe process? It's the same, it follows the same logic here. First, let's filter for events containing Python as the parent process. So keeping this as is, we're gonna remove the process ID for now. Winlog event, it's gonna be 1 or 3. Are we looking for network connections? We're looking only for command line value. So we're gonna put 1 here. We remove the double and here we know that Python is the parent process. We're going to use parent or process parent name and here we're going to say wildcard Python wildcard. Okay, everything that contains Python as the parent process. Let's see here if we have any hits. We have 1. The parent process is Python, and the process that was spawned is CMD. The question here is saying, what is the command line value of the net process? Now, the command line was spawned by Python, but there is no mention of the net, the executable net here. Looks like we're gonna have to examine this in more details. Gonna expand this and click on View Surrounding Documents. So the Python script dev was executed through the command line. But we still don't know yet what are the events surrounding this process. Okay, let's assume that the process here, CMD, after executing net users, should become the parent process. What if we look for entries where the parent process parent name, let's assume it is CMD, and let's look now for entries highlighting the net users. We have 155 hits, not too many events, but anyway, we're gonna take a look. And here we can see net executable and the command executed. I know in the parent process there was supposed to be Python here, but that's how it is in this scenario. So that's the answer for this question. We're gonna now move on to defense evasion and examine attempts to evade antiviruses and Windows such as Windows Defender and other sorts of firewalls. I'm gonna start with the question 1. What is the PID of the CMD process that executed partial set MP preference disable real-time monitoring? So here we want to find the incriminating process that was responsible for disabling the real-time monitoring, I guess, in Windows Defender. To find that out, we're gonna go back, make sure the indice is winlog beat, and only change this and use the given. Yeah, we're gonna take this and search with it. We got 30 hits. Appears to be 30 hits. Now we're assuming that our culprit is partial, but let's find out more details. As you can see, guys, here there is a command under the process command line. The command executed partial and set the MP preference, as you can see here, to disable the real-time monitoring. This means that partial was used to disable the Windows Defender real-time protection. And the culprit here, the actual culprit, was the installer, which confirms our, previous analysis that was the main process or the main payload responsible for the execution of the other payloads and maintaining, other aspects of the attack. And now it is actually working on disabling the Windows Defender. So the answer to the question is the process PID. I'm going to examine the process PID here, examine the entry, and scrolling down to the process ID, it is 428. What's the partial command line argument used to clear the event logs? So clearing the event logs is another attempt to evade defenses, because blue teams and security analysts regularly are on the lookout for any malicious modifications in the system through examining the logs. When you clear the logs, you don't leave any chance for the blue team or the SOC analyst to find what you did. So clearing the logs, we have to find out the attempts of clearing the logs. That's why we're going to use the win event log for this. So ironically, when you remove the event logs, okay, Windows still logs your attempt. That's how we're going to use this. So win log ID, event ID. Okay. According to Microsoft, when you remove event logs, another event is logged in Windows whose ID is 1102. And there is one, but there is no information about it. Let's take a look. The question here is, what is the partial command line argument used to clear the event logs of this workstation? I'm gonna have to change this to 1. Nothing. And now, okay. Okay. So the partial command line argument, but we cannot see any command line argument here. So what could be the reason? Let's first examine the few surrounding documents. And look, there is one. So there is one here, partial command to clear the event log, and specifically clearing the security logs. So that's the partial command line argument. And lastly, what is the process PID of Chrome target for process injection? So we were looking for process injection. When we inject a process into another process, what we are actually doing is making a process spawning or creating threats in another process to hide its actual behavior. So we were looking for creating threads with D, not with T. I'm gonna go back and use event ID 8 here this time. Event ID 8 indicates that a process has spawned threads in another process, which is actually process injection. So use wildcard and we have 24 hits. The question now, what is the ID of the process that was target for process injection? So Chrome was the culprit here. Chrome's target for a process injection. Yeah, meaning like it's like Chrome created threads in another process. What is that process? Let's see Chrome here, if there is Chrome. We don't have Chrome as parent process, either as a parent process nor as the process name. What if we look for the relevant fields? Let's look for target. So we have target image. If we add this and remove the destination IP, let's see here. In the target image, we can see here that Chrome as a parent process has created threads in this target image, which means that this is the process that was target for process injection. We can examine the details here to find out the PID or the process ID. Scrolling down, it is 60 if I'm correct. No, it's 4000. I think I read it from another entry. Let's see here, scrolling up. Are we looking into parent process ID? So it is 60. Yeah, here it is. It is the target image ID. Target process ID, it is 4240. 60 was the process ID of a Chrome. We want to find the process ID of the target image in which the threads were created. It is under this field. Where it is? Yeah, target process ID. Okay, now we move on to persistence. Okay, in persistence we have only two questions. The first one, what is the name of the parent process of the CMD process that executed the scheduled task creation? So here, CMD was a child process through which scheduled task was created. We want to find out the parent process. Okay, so this means we want to hunt for scheduled tasks. That's why we can use again win event logs and use, according to Microsoft, it is 4698, the event ID when a scheduled task is created. We can update, and we have 10 hits. We can expand the search by including more clues about a task or a scheduled task. For example, we can add parentheses here. Okay, and use the or, other two parentheses, use the strings such as scheduled tasks or looks like we have some network problems. Okay, now it's working. And let's say register scheduled task. These are common strings that you can find when a task is created or scheduled. So beside the event ID, we're also including these strings. So we got more hits. There were 11, now there are 13. Now we have more clues about what happened. So highlighting that this is the process name, the parent process name. We know that CMD was actually a child process through which a scheduled task was created. Looking at the command line argument of the first one here, we can see that CMD was used to create scheduled task Okay, let's see the question here. What is the name of the parent process? The parent process is PowerShell. Using the process ID of malicious reg execution. What is the value of the process command line used to execute a registry modification? So here, registry entry was changed. That's why we can again use the event ID. When the registry entry is changed, Windows logs event ID or event whose ID is 13. Let's see here if we have some hits. Yeah, we have 1,486 hits. So using the process ID of malicious reg execution, what is the value of the process command line used to execute the registry modification? So now we know there are registry modifications. We want to find out exactly what was modified using this process. Usually, these details of registry modification can only be found using sysmonitor. Let's see if there is sysmonitor in the fields. Nope. WinLog. So there is WinLog channel and there is sysmon. Okay, that's great. Let's add it here. So we're going to use sysmonitor for this and update. We have 1,481 hits. Okay, assuming that the registry key that was modified for persistence, we want to look for the registry keys that match this criteria. That's why we're going to use, or we're going to look for a way to specify the registry path. So path, so we have registry path here. And we have a lot of paths. Okay, we're going to specify the registry path that match the startup or run once, if you have heard about this. So and registry.path. Okay, I have this copied beforehand, so we're gonna just add it. It was added in the wrong place. Okay, so look here, we're looking for run, user, or shell. These are most commonly used to store startups. So update or processes that start with system startup. Okay, and now we're gonna remove the parent process for now. The target image. Leave these as is, or yeah, let's remove them. And here, add the path. We're looking for this process. So indeed there is one match that modified the run once. The question here is we want to find the process command line. So first we're gonna have to extract the ID of this process. $5,860. Gonna copy this and use process.pid and see there is one hit. Okay, let's remove this one for now and see all the events generated by this process. Okay, now we're going to use command line Okay, so the first occurrence is here, and that's the command that was created. Registry add at the registry once key, and to add the executable installer at the startup. So this means that the process here was used to change the key run once and add an installer into the list of entries, indicating that the attacker wanted to add the payload here to start with the system starter. So that is the exact command. And lastly, we're gonna hunt for command and control. Okay, list of questions. Let's see, we only have a couple of questions, I guess. We have 3 questions. Okay, the first one. What is the link downloaded using partial to establish C2 over DNS? Okay, so now we're gonna switch to packet beat. Remove this and see how many hits we have. Okay, what is the link downloaded using partial to establish C2 over DNS? To find the link downloaded using partial, we're gonna first have to find the domain name that was queried, right? To find the domain name, we're gonna have to use DNS. And to do that, we're gonna first look for all the DNS requests made. You can use this query. You can find this in the room and update. We want to find the list of DNS queries. So we're gonna remove registry path, command line, and here look for DNS. We have a lot of fields starting with DNS. Look for domain, DNS question registered domain. Okay, can add this. Also there is subdomain, you also can add this here. And now you can see the list of the domains that were queried. Okay, so since we're assuming that this is an attack involved DNS queries to command and control from which a partial script was downloaded, we should assume that the queries to that malicious domain or the C2 domain occupy the highest number of queries. That's why we're gonna need to find the highest count of DNS queries and find what are the corresponding domains. So here we're gonna save this. Save current query as DNS C2, and now we need to examine them using the visualize library. Okay, so now we add domain, subdomain. It doesn't hurt if we add the host name, sort the records in a descending order, and we can see the highest count goes to this domain name, meaning this domain name was queried the most in the environment other than these domains. And actually it's the only weird looking domain among other domain names. So now we suspect that this is the C2 domain that the attacker was actually querying through the installed payloads. So what we're going to do now, we're going to narrow down the focus on this domain. So going back to now the Discover tab, okay, gonna leave this as is, and just we're gonna add and DNS question registered domain. It's going to be the domain name that we found. XYZ. Oh, and also we need the host name. and host hostname will be this. So we have around 2,207. Look at the subdomain queried. All of these subdomains were encoded using hexadecimal, which actually further increased our suspicions that this is the C2 domain used in the attack. Okay, what do you want to find now? We're gonna need to find the PowerShell script downloaded. Okay, let's first see if there are any IPs. Destination IP. And destination IP is the same destination IP we saw earlier in our examination. Okay, so what we want to do now, we want to take a look at all the queries sent to this IP address. These might be DNS queries, these might be DNS queries over other protocols. To find out the exact PowerShell downloaded, we're going to have to examine the network connections made to this IP address. So now we're going to modify the query here, and let's go back to the host name and use and destination IP. It's going to be this IP address, and the protocol will be DNS. So we can specify the protocol by specifying the port. Destination port is going to be 53 for DNS. Now we're going to switch to the win event logs, and oh, nothing. Let's see if we modify this to put wildcard here. Taking a look here, we can see that the process that was executing the DNS queries was NSLOOKUP. So to find out the exact command, okay, make sure that the time is set to a descending order and select the first one. Click on View Surrounding Documents. You should be able to see the exact command line used here. So as you can see, look, through NSLOOKUP, PowerShell was spawned to download the PowerShell script. And that was the answer for this question. Now, after investigating C2 over Discord events, what command is used to download the malicious dev Python script? So we were looking at Discord events. Going back here to discover, mainly we're looking again at win logbeat. And from here we're gonna say hostname this time it's gonna be the same, but we are looking for all of the host names this time, not only the first one. And we want to look for any indication of Discord. Discord. So we have 31 hits. Okay, what are we looking at here? So here, after investigating C2 over Discord events, what command is used to download the malicious Python script? So here we're looking to add the process command line, the process name, parent command line, parent process, destination IP, domain. You can add these as well. Okay. So take a look at the first one here. Discord.gg. It's very different from discord.com. Most probably this is the malicious domain that was contacted as well. So you can take a look here, and click on view surrounding documents. So based on that, we cannot see what are the command line arguments involving this domain name. But we can see the responsible process is an installer. So if we again re-examine that process and examine all of the other spawned processes by an installer along with their command line arguments, we'll be able to find out what was the partial script downloaded from this domain name. So we're going to go back to Discover, and this time we're looking at WinLogBeat. This time also we are specifying all hosts with event ID 1. Okay, and process parent, it's going to be, let's see, executable. It's going to be the installer. So we got 23 hits. Let's add the command line. Process name, command line. Can also add destination registered domain. Let's see if there is an indication of a script was downloaded by this process. And it is. Look at this. Using an installer, a CMD child process was spawned and used partial to download the dev Python script from this domain name. So this is the answer for the question. And last question of this room is, what is the name of the process that's also associated with CDN with the domain name we have talked about? Okay, remember that was a domain name we discovered earlier here, used to download the partial script. There was another process associated with this domain name, or which used this domain name. We're going to find out this process. I'm going to go back here, stay on, or we're going to switch to packet now, logs. And here we're going to remove all this, and add destination domain. It's going to be the domain name mentioned here in this task. Okay, add all hosts. Still, we've got nothing. Yeah, it's L. Golge XYZ. Oh, there is CDN here, so we can add CDN. Now we have 22,000 hits. What's the name of the process associated with this domain name? Looks like now we're gonna have to remove some columns. And we cannot find information about the process using the packet beat. We're going to switch to WinLogBeat now. But with WinLogBeat, there is nothing about destination domain. So we're going to remove the field name here and add just the domain name. Do we have any hits? We have 10 hits. Okay. So there was another process involved beside partial. As you can see, it is update. It is involved with this domain name. Let's see the relationship between them. You can click here and view surrounding documents. The relationship is not clear. Let's click back. And here we can add more information, I believe, about to enrich the context. So beside the command line, we have the process parent command line, the process parent name, the process command line. But let's see if there is IP address. We can add an IP, destination IP. So yeah, look at this. The process name here was involved with this IP address again of this domain name. So without looking at much details, this is the second process that was involved with this C2 server, which is the answer for your question. And that marks the end of this long room. Thank you guys for watching till the end. And don't forget, I'm gonna see you in the next video.